As you ask most people what their number one fear is, what do you think it is? Most people's number one fear is public humiliation. Okay? I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm not afraid of it. Because I've had plenty.
Mel Gibson is no stranger to controversy. Over the years, the famed director and actor has built a reputation for both brilliance and brashness, never shying away from voicing his opinions no matter how unpopular.
No matter how strong you are going to be affected by this place. It's going to divert you from where you were going.
Sure.
You're going to be diverted.
Today's Hollywood is not the Hollywood that Gibson entered in the late 1970s. Back then, the industry was more focused on creating timeless stories. Now, he sees an industry obsessed with woke culture, more interested in checking boxes and avoiding controversy than telling compelling stories. He argues that everyone in the industry is forced to follow this new ideology just to stay afloat. Gibson has gone so far as to call this shift unbearable.
I mean, you feel as if you're committing a crime.
Yeah.
And it's kind of slimy. It's kind of prostitution.
Sure.
But that, I think, is even beyond. It's just kind of watching someone go through the act of prostituting themselves. There's something very almost unbearable about it.
His involvement with Sound of Freedom perfectly encapsulates his current stance. When major studios shied away from the film's subject matter, Gibson didn't just lend his support, he became its champion. The film, which focuses on the dark realities of child trafficking, was deemed too controversial for mainstream Hollywood, but Gibson saw a story that needed to be told, regardless of the potential backlash.
Disturbing problems in our world today is human trafficking, and particularly the trafficking of children. Now, the first step in eradicating this crime is awareness. Go see Sound of Freedom.
The production and release of Sound of Freedom became a masterclass in defiance. Originally completed in 2018 and set for release by 20th Century Fox, the film was shelved when Disney acquired the studio. The producers had to self-fund efforts to buy back the rights from Disney, ultimately succeeding. With a modest budget of just under $15 million, a small change in modern Hollywood, the film's backers relied on word of mouth and grassroots support to propel it forward. Ironically, the more the film was blocked, attacked, and censored, the more its popularity soared. It eventually grossed over $100 million at the domestic box office, even outperforming Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning in an unexpected twist. It seems Disney tried to bury a potential blockbuster, but the question remains: why? If there's one thing we know about Disney, it's that they've gone fully woke. Disney
would be rolling in his grave about now. His magical film empire, now worth more than $67 billion, has gone about as woke as you could get.
But first, today protesters gathered outside the California headquarters of Disney in Burbank and called for a boycott of a company that was once beloved by children and parents alike.
A company built on children's entertainment could have taken a stand to protect kids by backing Sound of Freedom. Instead, their decision to suppress the movie says a lot. They've profited off child actors for decades but refused to support a film that shines a light on one of the darkest issues facing children today. The reason? According to Gibson and others, Sound of Freedom goes against the woke ideology that has deeply infiltrated Disney's culture. Hollywood, as Gibson describes it, has always been a strange place. Powerful forces behind the scenes have long dictated the industry's direction, but the rise of wokeness has made things worse.
The social contract. You can't get mad. You can't get mad. You can't let it get you, because you have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken that you are going to be fucked over at some point by people who you may have done something nice for.
Now, it's either you conform to the narrative or get canceled. Gibson himself has been a frequent target of cancellation attempts throughout his illustrious career. He likens Hollywood's cancel culture to what happens with priests in the church. Once you're targeted, there's no redemption.
Personally, I know many priests who have been canceled, but not for the reasons you'd think. I mean, it's not like they did a hit-and-run drive and left the scene of the crime, or embezzled church funds, stole the altar wine, or committed some other heinous crime. No, not at all. And who's persecuting them? Well, their own bishops. How's that? Yep. Who are they? Well, they're a pack of men who generally passively sit by and tolerate any kind of nonsense, but if one of their priests utters something that resembles orthodoxy, well, then they spring into action, they reprimand him, and they bully him and do their best to cancel him. And it succeed. They drum him out of the service, you know.
Despite Hollywood's self-congratulatory approach to social causes, it's telling that Sound of Freedom hasn't received the same level of recognition as other so-called socially conscious films. Why is a movie about one of the world's most pressing crises being ignored? Could it be that Hollywood finds the subject too uncomfortable? Or does the film simply not fit the industry's preferred narrative? For Gibson, the answer is clear. He has long criticized Hollywood's hypocrisy, arguing that the industry is more concerned with looking good than actually doing good. To him, Sound of Freedom exposes a deep inconsistency within an industry that claims to care about justice and equality, but turns a blind eye to some of the most vulnerable people, children. This isn't the first time Gibson has found himself at odds with Hollywood's mainstream values. From Braveheart to The Passion of the Christ to Hacksaw Ridge, his films have often sparked controversy, not just for their content, but for how they challenge the norms of the industry.
So everything was going well, so you decided you needed to do a story about the Christ.
Yeah.
Because was that a calling, would you say, or was that another challenge?
It was just something that got into my head about I just kept having visions about it, you know, and about, you know, what was that like 12 hours like? And what was that really like? I mean, what does it mean to get scourged and crucified, and the significance of what one single event and what one God-man has done historically and changed civilization. I mean, this is like an amazing thing. I mean, and of course, you know, you step into that arena, you know, it's going to create some fireworks.
Did you think about that before you did it?
Well, I thought, you know, a lot of other people did it. You know, George Stevens did it, and who's the other guy? The Cecil B. DeMille, right. And, you know, all these other people, and Franco Zeffirelli did it, and man, they didn't get too much, so I thought, I'll just try this. But man, it just was like, well, it was like lighting the world on fire. And, you know, it just turned into like such a shit fight.
Gibson's work is raw, unfiltered, and often difficult to watch, but that's precisely the point. Art, in his view, should provoke and challenge. It should force audiences to confront uncomfortable truths, even if it makes them squirm. His views on wokeness and political correctness have made him one of the greatest victims of the cancel culture sweeping through the industry, facing immense backlash over the years.
Everyone was throwing rocks. I mean, it was like, I was just ducking stuff, you know, the newspaper, they all pig-piled on, and I was like, you know, seriously persecuted. And as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a man, as a Christian, and as an American even, you know, my rights were violated in every way you can imagine, and no one seemed to give a shit, which really bothered me, because it was a real pig pile. But
Mel Gibson has effortlessly ticked off all the woke hate boxes, so it's no surprise that the woke community has tried to cancel him. But somehow, Gibson seems uncancelable. Over the past 14 years, his career has persisted in what feels like a never-ending game of cancellation. He currently has 4 directorial projects in the pipeline, including a remake of The Wild Bunch and a sequel to The Passion of the Christ. Add to that a string of acting roles in upcoming films alongside established names like Charlie Hunnam, Walton Goggins, and Marianne Jean-Baptiste, and it's clear that Gibson isn't fading into obscurity anytime soon. So, why has Gibson become uncancelable? One big reason is his deep connections in Hollywood, which keep him working. His immense wealth, much of it from The Passion of the Christ, and his clout as a director, writer, producer, and actor mean he can create his own films without much oversight. Despite facing relentless public scrutiny, Gibson has managed to thrive. His last film as a director, Hacksaw Ridge, was a critical success, and even earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Director, much to the frustration of those who wanted to see his downfall. His ability to attract top talent speaks volumes. Big names like Andrew Garfield and Vince Vaughn continue to work with him because, at the end of the day, being involved in a Gibson-directed film could still mean standing at the podium come award season. It's not that the woke community hasn't tried to cancel him. They've been vocal at every turn. Each time a new Gibson project is announced, there's a fresh wave of reminders and articles dissecting his controversial past. But thus far, their efforts have not been enough to derail his career. The reason? Gibson has built a level of self-sufficiency and industry prestige that allows him to continue operating despite the noise. Whether or not you agree with his views, there's no denying that Gibson is a force to be reckoned with, a filmmaker who refuses to be silenced even when it makes others uncomfortable. And with projects like the sequel to The Passion of the Christ on the horizon, it's clear that Gibson isn't done challenging Hollywood just yet.